Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where Karens love to lie to police to get someone arrested. And in this episode, it backfires hard on this one woman. Guys, the lineup of stories today are super duper entitled, and the last one will leave you shaking your heads, trust me. With that said, subscribe if you haven't, because we're diving in. So, on my birthday this year, I treated myself to $50 in lottery tickets, and I managed to hit one of the huge $50,000 payouts. After taxes, I had about $34,000, so I've put $7,500 into my wife's car and put the rest into a high-interest bank account. I'm planning to switch jobs early next year, but first, I plan to travel for the month of January and half of February, across Asia and Europe. I've never had a proper vacation, and I've really wanted to take the chance to get out there and explore the world. Well, yesterday, my daughter Emily was talking about the job movement, and the topic of the vacation came up. I told her how I'm financing it with the lottery winnings, and Emily went quiet before saying, "Dad, instead of wasting $25,000 on a vacation, why don't you do something practical, like maybe spend $5,000 on a vacation and help your daughter not graduate with a mountain of debt?" I told her I'd be happy to co-sign loans for her, but I was only willing to pay upwards of $10,000 of her education, the amount that I promised both her and her brother when they were 15 years old. She said even after paying that $10,000 off, she's looking to be about $29,000 in debt by the time she finishes school. I told her that really sucks, but then I reminded her that I offered community college as an option years ago, when she was applying to schools, but she insisted that she didn't want to miss out on prestige, as she got into Dartmouth. I talked to her about how transferring was an option, but she ultimately picked that route. She's brought up how the $10,000 I gave Jason, my son, was enough to completely pay for college costs, plus some extra spending change because he got a state scholarship that paid 100% tuition. She argued how it's not fair, that I was essentially willing to pay off all his college, but leave her with a mountain of debt. I told her he'd be able to argue the same thing if she got more money than he did. Ultimately, the line I drew was that both children get equal amounts, and I can choose how I want to spend my money. End of discussion. I thought it was over, but it turns out that she went to talk to my wife Amy behind my back. Amy tried to persuade me to make it a 2 to 3 week vacation as opposed to 1.5 months I'd planned. I told her the same thing I told our daughter, and then she got mad and said I'm being selfish and using all that money for myself. Never mind all the amount that I put into her car and the fact that she used all of a $5,000 inheritance on cosmetic plastic surgery 4 years back. I told her this vacation was non-negotiable. Now I have 2 women in this household giving me passive-aggressive looks and eye rolls. I feel like they're both acting entitled to my money. Am I really being unreasonable here? Okay, so the reason I decided to share this post is that people are super split on this one. Some people say that OP is totally entitled to his winnings and he can do whatever he wants with his money, which is absolutely fair. And others are saying that he should think of family and help his daughter with her education instead of blowing the $25,000 on a vacation for himself. In my personal opinion, Dad already gave the son $10,000. He's willing to give his daughter $10,000, so both kids get an equal share. It's not Dad's responsibility to pay off a mountain of student debt for you. And hey, with a degree from Dartmouth, she's probably gonna land a good job. Fingers crossed. So, let me know what you guys think. Is Dad acting entitled for wanting a 1.5-month vacation, or is the daughter entitled for expecting Dad to pay off her mountain of student loan debt? Let me know what you guys think. Okay, so I never thought that I would run across an actual Karen, like those posts that I read here. But yesterday, I was proved wrong. So wrong. A little bit of backstory. I have a 5-year-old girl who's best friends with my neighbor's daughter, who's special needs. The two are inseparable. My wife had bought our daughter a toy a few weeks ago as a reward for doing all of her chores and being rewarded as Student of the Week in her kindergarten class. She immediately took it over to the neighbor's house and the 2 girls loved to play with it. It's one of those toys that comes with accessories, slime, stickers, etc. Well, since then, this particular toy has been featured on a very popular morning talk show, and now it's pretty hard to find. My daughter's friend's birthday is the day after Thanksgiving, and she asked me if we could buy her best friend the same toy as her gift. We couldn't say no to her request for her best friend, so we start looking online to see if we can find one. After a few days of no luck, one of the very popular, more bougie of the big box stores had some in stock at the store, about 30 minutes away. I hit the road to try to get my hands on one before they were all gone. So this is what happened when I got there, and I still can't believe it happened. I get to the store, grabbed a shopping cart because I was gonna grab a couple of other things while I was there, and walked straight to the toy department. I looked around for a few minutes before I finally saw the toy I was after. There was only one left, so I grabbed it and put it into my cart. I was so glad I finally found one. I start to walk away to continue shopping when all of a sudden I hear a voice behind me say, excuse me, but that toy's mine. I put it down and I was coming right back for it. Do you mind? At that I replied, oh, I'm sorry, but I've been looking for this toy as a gift for a very special little girl, and it was on the shelf, so I'm sorry, but no, I'm gonna buy this. Hearing that, the woman instantly shot daggers at me with her eyes, and she said, are you kidding? I was here first, and I need it more than you. I have a customer that ordered it, and I need it right now, so please hand it over. She was trying to be polite with her P's and Q's, but I could tell she was angry. And that's when it struck me. She's a reseller, and she promised something that she didn't have. At that point, I didn't, and I was pretty much like, oh well, that's not my problem, but maybe they have more in the back. You should ask somebody that works here. I then went about my way to finish my shopping. As I was walking away, she snipped, you're a real jerk, you know that? To which I sarcastically responded, maybe, but I got what I came for. Have an awesome day, and walked away. I made my way to the laundry detergent aisle and quickly forgot about the woman. A few minutes later, as I was grabbing some detergent and dryer sheets, I stopped to check what else was on my list, and the same woman entered the aisle and she quickly said, ugh, there you are. Listen, I asked an employee and they don't know when more are coming in. I would appreciate it if you would do the right thing and just give it back to me before I find the manager and tell them that you stole it from my hands. Now, hearing that, I quickly responded, huh? What are you talking about? This toy was on the shelf and nobody else was around when I picked it up. So please leave me alone. You can't have it, and that's that. I tried to walk out of the aisle when this crazy Karen stepped in front of my cart, reached into my cart, and tried to take the toy. I quickly pulled the cart back and said, hey, what's your problem, lady? Get away from me. She tried again, but by this time, I put my hand on the toy before she could grab it. She then dug her nails into my arm before I smacked her hand with a loud, what the heck, lady? Get away from me. And this is when the crazy Karen act went into overdrive. The woman instantly starts screaming for help at the top of her lungs, saying, help, help, he's attacking me, help me somebody. So naturally, a bunch of people quickly came over to see what's going on here. And there it was, a 6'3" man with tattoos and a shaved head and beard, standing there as she threw herself on the floor screaming for help. I thought to myself that this is going to end badly for me. At this point, 2 employees were a couple of aisles over and they came running over, and she's still screaming that I assaulted her. Now, there was a few people, and the employees, they were looking at the Karen on the ground pleading for help and screaming for someone to call 911. The employee asked what happened while helping her up from the floor, and she immediately lied and said that I attacked her and took the item from her cart. She screamed that these toys were so hard to get and she was trying to get one for her daughter, when I came along and just stole it from her, and how I'm such a horrible person for stealing from a child. I quickly stated that this crazy lady is lying, and she attacked, then threw herself on the floor to get me in trouble. A manager shows up and asks what happened, while Karen's standing there with crocodile tears, saying that I assaulted her over a toy. I quickly denied the false accusation and demanded police to be called. The manager had police called, and I waited right there. The lady had a crowd of people around her, consoling her, and they were all looking at me like I was some sort of woman beater. All the while, she's telling everybody around her what a monster I am, and that she intends to press full charges against me for assault. She was telling everybody how her daughter wanted this one toy, and she can't believe a monster like me would attack her, after she told me it was for her daughter. So after about 10 to 15 minutes, 2 police officers show up and start to ask questions about what happened. I explained what happened from the beginning to end, and she told her little twisted fairy tale. The officers asked if security cameras had a shot of the area. We were escorted to the manager's office, and while one officer reviews the footage with the manager, the other officer asked for our IDs and stepped out of the office, more than likely to do a warrant check, I assumed. And this is when glorious karma shows up. So after a couple of minutes of the officer reviewing the footage, and Karen continuing to lie about the situation, the officer then asked Karen, ma'am, I am only going to ask you this once. Would you like to change your story about what happened? And I instantly smiled from ear to ear. She screams, what are you talking about? He attacked me, and I want him arrested," said Karen. The officer then responded, "Ma'am, that's not happening." He then turned to me and asked if I wanted to press charges for assault, and how he saw the woman aggressively grab my arm and go ballistic. My answer to that was yes, and Karen went as pale as a ghost. She went on a tirade. Just then, the second officer came back into the office. He hands me back my ID, and then he whispered something to the other officer. They then asked Karen to stand up, put her hands behind her back, and arrested her for an outstanding felony warrant along with an assault charge. It was an awesome outcome. The manager apologized to me for all of the trouble as Karen was led out of the office in handcuffs. The officer photographed the scratches on my arm for evidence, and then gave me a copy of the report for court, and he wished me a nice rest of the day. The manager even gave me a $50 gift card that I used to pay for my purchase, and I went about my merry way. All of this over a toy and self-entitlement. Oh my goodness, the way that Karen twisted the story to become the victim was so insane, guys. And it definitely didn't look good for OP, and she had everybody wrapped around her fingers. Until store cameras. Like, when I read that the police officer said, "Ma'am, would you like to change your story?" That was the moment that Karen knew she effed up, and I'm so glad OP pressed charges and the loony lady was arrested. And hey, why the heck are you causing a scene and demanding police be called when you have a warrant out for your arrest, Karen? Think. So this happened back in the 1990s when I had my second comic store. One afternoon, I was in my store going through the inventory when a woman walked in. That was unusual back then because, well, it was rare to see a woman in our store. Again, 90s. I saw that she did have the precursor to what would become the Karen cut. She was wearing large rimmed glasses and a skirt that was the style back then. I figured she might be looking for a gift for her son, so I asked if I could help. She asked me if I bought boxes of comics. I told her usually not, unless there was something I could use. I told her I would take a look. So we go to her car and bring in a couple of long boxes. These boxes hold about 300 bagged and boarded books, or 250 boarded. They were all bagged and seemed to be in good shape. Now these were the popular books at the time: X-Men, Hulk, Ghost Rider, etc, etc. I thought I could sell them and offered her $100 for everything, and she accepted. So she left, and I put the boxes on a table to price them and sort them out. A little while later, a kid who's about 12 years old walks in, and he looks at the books on the wall and notices the boxes. He asked if they were for sale, and I said yes, but they weren't priced out yet. So if there's something he wanted, I would give him the price. The boy starts looking through them, and after a few seconds, he has a strange look on his face, and I asked him if something was wrong, and I will never forget what he said. He said, "These are my books." I said, "What?" And he repeats it, that those are his. I asked him if he could verify it, and he said he had a code written on every board, and he could recite them. I then pulled out 5 books at random, and he nailed every code. I asked him to describe his mother, and he described the woman that sold me the books. I told him not to worry, that he'll get them back. I asked for his phone number, and I called it, placed it on speaker, and waited. So after a few rings, she answers, and I responded, saying, "Mrs. Karen, your son's here, and he informs me that the books you sold me did not belong to you. Will you please come down and give me back the $100 so he can have his books back, as I do not buy stolen merchandise?" Her response is, "My son is in your store?" She then screams at him to get out of the store now and to never set foot in there again. The woman also shrieks that if her son ever comes in again, that she'll have me arrested. The kid was in tears. All he muttered was, "You stole my books." She then continues her rant saying, "I don't want that stupid crap in my house," and then she hung up. Now, I let the kid sit down while I processed what happened. While this is going on, another kid and his mother saw him and said hello. They knew him and knew the kid's mother, and they asked what happened, and the kid told her. The mom was disgusted, and she said she'll take him home and have a few words with his mother. Before he left, I asked him what he wanted to do. He said, "Do whatever it takes," and I asked, "Even call the police?" And he says yes. I said I'm gonna try one more thing before that. So about 7:30 that night, I called the same number and got the father, and I explained what happened that afternoon. The only thing he said was, "She did what?" I repeated again, and he said the same. Then Karen realized who he was talking to and starts screaming. The father thanks me and said he would handle it, and asked what time I closed. About 15 minutes later, I see the kid and the father with the Karen being dragged along, and she's shrieking so loud 3 counties away had bleeding ears. He drags her in and tells her to give me back the $100. She yells that she doesn't want that stuff in the house and she won't do it. That she's gonna have me arrested for selling this garbage to children, and how could they even let me open this in town? She hated Superman and baseball cards, saying it's for nerds. She then breaks away from the father and attempts to kick out my showcase, and it was only because he managed to grab her collar and yank her back that they weren't smashed. She then tried to shove my computer off the counter, but I managed to stop her. The father gave me back what I paid, plus a little extra, and he apologized. Karen said if the comics came home with them, she'll just set them on fire. Father said no, he'll make sure they won't. He also said that he would come with a kid in the future. Now, I found out the aftermath years later, secondhand, so I can't verify. So Karen basically destroyed the relationship and never apologized. So after the kid graduated, he joins the army, married, and had a kid. He also doesn't see her often, but allows contact when the father's there, over comic books. So yeah, ultimate entitled mom right there. We won't allow nerdy comics in our home. Like, what's wrong with reading and enjoying comics? That woman was off her rocker. And OP's right, why make a scene over comics? Okay, so I'll start by saying that this story is from 5 years ago. I figured it's finally time to post this gem of a woman's story. It's around 11 p.m. on a Saturday night, and I'm sitting at home just getting ready to go to bed. I'm an on-call tow truck operator, and figure I'll be going out early next morning. Right as my head hit the pillow, the radio chirped, and dispatcher goes, "Hey OP, are you still awake?" I tell him, "Yeah, I'm up." "Good, we've got a 1-car accident the next town over. PD wants it expedited, so please hurry, but be safe." I say to him, 10-4, I'm out the door. After a roughly 20-minute drive, I'm headed out to a small town, looking for the accident, and I see it. The coroner and forensics vans were parked in the road, amongst a dozen squad cars. Now, a typical 1-car accident has 1 officer sitting with it for paperwork reasons, with the tow operator. Now, obviously, I knew things just got a lot darker than I had originally been told. So, sparing the gory details of what happened, it was 6 kids between the ages of 17 and 20. They had been in an SUV while driving drunk, and only the driver had a seatbelt on. The vehicle swerved off the road and the driver went to correct it. However, 1, he overcorrected, and 2, on that side of the road, it had about an 8-inch lip, which made it extremely rough of a transition to pull the vehicle back onto the road. As it came back on the road, the driver fishtailed, trying to correct back in the other direction, and again overcorrecting. This sent the vehicle rolling down the road, in and out of the 4-foot drainage ditch next to the road. All 5 passengers were ejected, and they died on the scene. So no sooner than I get this winch tied on my truck do I hear frantic beeping of a car horn. I turn around, and directly behind me is a woman who looks to be in her early 40s, who's now just holding the horn, letting it blare nonstop as she's yelling out her window. I ignore her and turn around to go back to this delicate job that I'm in the middle of, wondering how a Karen got past the police roadblock that was roughly a third of the mile up the road. As I'm slowly maneuvering this 8,000-pound vehicle from the roof onto its side, the honking stops. Maybe 8 seconds later, I feel a hand grab my shoulder, and she attempts to spin me around. Now, I'm a 6'3", 280-pound guy, so there's absolutely no way this 40-something, 5'4"-ish, 160-pound woman is achieving this goal. I let out a sigh as I stopped winching the vehicle and looked at the sky with my eyes, asking every god I can think of for the strength not to headbutt this bitch. I turn around and attempt to say, "Ma'am, the road is closed due to a fatal accident." Karen cuts me off and says, "I don't care what you have to say. Get out of my way because I'm late." Now, I'm extremely annoyed now and just talking over Karen's continued complaints. So I say, "Listen, 5 people have just effing died here, and there's absolutely no way anybody's driving down this road for hours. So I suggest you turn around, drive back through the police roadblock that you somehow got around, right now." At that, Karen says, "Excuse me? I live right there," pointing back behind her vehicle, "and I have to use this road to get where I'm going. You will move your truck right now, or I'm calling the police." By this time, the forensics crew has heard all the yelling, and the PTO engaged and walked over. Forensics crews do not dress like police, especially in the middle of the night on weekends. They're dressed in plain clothes, but they do carry a badge on them, and they'll put on a hazmat suit if needed. None were needed on the scene, just gloves and such. Karen says, "Which one of you's manager? This man won't move his goddamn truck to let me through. I'm calling the police." Now, the woman's actually holding the phone to the side of her head and talking to what we would find out later was 911. The forensic officer says, "Ma'am, I am the police and I don't want to hear any more goddamn excuses. Move the effing truck now." She was clapping between each word. So I say to her, "You stupid idiot. Do your 2 remaining brain cells constantly compete for 3rd place?" The forensics officer, stifling a chuckle, said, "Ma'am, if you don't get in your car and leave this crime scene, you will be arrested." Just as he finished saying this, a squad car comes screaming down the road from the same direction Karen came from and stopped behind her vehicle. The officer hops out of his car and the very first word he said were Karen's Miranda rights. Karen screamed, kicked, and swore that everybody else would be arrested, and she even tried to spit on me, which caused her to catch a tampering with evidence charge as we're on an active crime scene. By the time it was done, her charges were obstruction, assaulting an officer, misuse of 911, and interfering with an investigation. She took a deal that netted her 18 weekends in the county jail. However, I did get to tow her car as well. Monday morning, I met her husband, and he couldn't have been more embarrassed as he apologized over and over as he paid me and then inspected the vehicle and signed off that we didn't damage it. The impound cost roughly $600 as it was police initiated, and also for after-hours storage. Guys, I am shaking my head so hard at this Karen. Like, you're never allowed to inconvenience people like this, right? How dare you block this road? Like, seriously, some people truly think the world is all about them, even when lives are involved. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our slash entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed these crazy stories today. And hey, thank you so much for popping by to hang out with Steve-O and I. If you guys missed the last episode on the channel, a super entitled Karen lets her kid break into OP's house and she wants OP arrested. It's such a crazy story, like all of these are. So go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.